let's talk books. Okay, so in this video, we're doing recent reads for February, the most of what I read in February, but not all. But wait, there's more. We're going to do a quick look at my February TBR-ishness. And I just realized to put a book away. Oh well. And then a small haul thingy, because I'm a late night huckster and keep wanting to go, but wait, there's more. But I just figured, let's do all this and kind of get caught up, because guys, my life returned to normal tonight. It's like 2 a.m. almost, and I have read a chunk. I should probably put this over here. I have read a chunk tonight. I read The Dollhouse Caper for March, middle grade March. And I finished one in here and I don't know if that was tonight or last night, another one. So, but I woke up and it was late when I woke up from my nap, but I was still out here an hour before I have been for 3 months. It felt so good. And I feel guilty, it's like my husband's going back to work and I'm like, yoo-hoo! And it's not to get rid of him, but it's like normalcy. I can't tell you how good it feels I'm getting 6 hours back a day now. And that's a lot of time that's like my writing time. And that's like all the stuff that hasn't been happening. Guys, I wrote 2 chapters in the entire month of February. I write 2 a day most days. So it's been weird, and I feel like it's back. My planner is done, ready for me to use again. I haven't used a planner in and I kind of need to, because if I don't have it, I make mistakes. So, yeah, I feel like life is back and it feels so good. And then of course the guilt comes in, but that's okay. It's fine. Everything is just fine. So the book that I read after Vinyl Resting Place was Teri Blake's Winter Holiday. At first I wasn't enjoying this one as much. It did, instead of being kind of, she manages to put depth in a pretty short book. All of this series are pretty short, and women's fiction usually isn't. But she manages to put a lot of depth in that shortness, and I love that. Because Teri Blake is Carrie Trumbo. And in the Island series, her first book was called Secret Beach Boyfriend. And I did not like that title. I was like, I would never pick up a book with that title. And it bothered me, and I was just so sure it was going to be this fluffy romance that had nothing behind it. That book, guys, has so much depth to it. You're dealing with an OCD disorder, severe. You're dealing with family trauma. You're dealing with so much stuff in a 50,000-ish word book. And it was rich, and this whole Secret Beach Boyfriend thing wasn't just this fluffy trope. It actually had depth and meaning behind it. And I was like, well, that'll teach me. And now, even though that's still not a title I'd ever pick up, it's the right title for so many reasons. It was really cool. So that, I didn't see it at first in here. It really felt like she was working really hard to add a lot of drama to the story that didn't have any meaning, but it did all come together. It's not my favorite of the series, but it did all come together, and there were some of my favorite moments of the series. I was seriously ticked off. So the school in here knows that one of the characters and her husband are getting divorced. He left her for another woman. The kids have been struggling. The son made a really stupid decision, got caught. I think he got caught vaping at school. Something went wrong at school, but I feel like he got caught vaping. And so he's in trouble with the school. And the school's response is he basically has to keep proving himself over and over and over. And the only way they're going to let him off of all this stuff they're making him go through is pretty much if she makes sure that she completely distances herself from a friend that they've decided she has a romantic relationship with. She doesn't. They hadn't gone there. Not that they hadn't wanted to, but she's not fully divorced yet. And so they were handling it well, but the school, excuse me, since when this is a public school here. When is it their business? I just was like, I do not understand what is going on. I was so upset. So, but there were some really good things in it. And while it isn't my favorite in the series, it became a way better book. I mean, when I first started reading it, I'm like, this is maybe 3 stars. I just wasn't getting it. And I ended up giving it 4, and I'm glad I kept going because I was wondering, is it on my head? No, there were things. It's not that what's in it was the problem. It's that for me, the way it was done, I wasn't connecting right at first. I don't know if someone else would have the same thing, but there's that. Okay. Then I finally got, in February, got the first book in the Anthony Trollope Barchestershire series, The Warden done. So the gist of this story really is 200 years ago, a wealthy man set up a trust to take care of certain tradesmen. I think they weren't tradesmen. They were craftsmen. I think they were in the textiles industry, but don't quote me on that. I don't remember what it was, but it feels like textiles. Anyway, he set up this trust to take care of them in their old age. This is what he did. And so he gave the responsibility to the bishop of the church, I believe, to appoint someone to take care of them. Basically, that person, make sure that they're fed, clothed, housed, etc. Well, so in here you have the warden, who is also, I can't remember what he's called, is a musical guy in the church. It's gone over the weekend. So he is paid to basically be a chaplain to these guys, to take care of them, to do a lot. He's given £800 a year, which is a lot of money. If you think about it, that's less than the Dashwood women ended up with. But I mean, they were struggling, but I don't know that they needed to have been. They were used to extravagances, and I believe that was really their struggles with money, was that they had to learn how to balance when they had never had to do that before. If you think about it, Mr. Bennet has £2,000 a year that he runs an estate with. So he's responsible for servants, and he's responsible for, different workers on his estates. So 2,000, this is like a little less than half. And it's a lot of money, and it's just him and his daughter. And I don't think he has to pay for housing out of that. I think the house is something that comes with the job, but don't quote me on that. I can't remember now, but it feels like he wasn't having to pay for housing. So it felt like even more, I don't know. But anyway, so he's paid this. His daughter has a suitor who is by nature an activist. He wants to have a cause to fight for. And he discovers, the roots of this living that this warden has. And he decides that it's wrong that the warden gets £800 a year, that the warden gets £800 a year to take care of these men and to, do all this stuff, while the men just get a house and all their needs met. It's so, I get mad at him because I'm like, seriously, get over yourself. But he really sees it as terribly wrong, and like they are taking advantage of these men. And, this warden actually out of his own pocket gives them pocket money, which isn't a lot. Okay. So this guy goes to these men and tells them that they are being put upon, that they should be each getting £100 a year, and the warden shouldn't be getting anything, and that this isn't, they have been misused. and gets them to sign a petition so that they can, it becomes a big deal. I just wanted to shake this guy. Clearly, I have different opinions on this than him, but what I love was the warden, because he listens to this man's argument. He is the humblest man. He listens to this man's argument, and he decides the man is right. And he decides that he's giving up the job because he shouldn't have it. Now, those men are not going to get this money, and he knows it. He is kind to the men even when they are not kind to him. He is just he's not a perfect man, because he is weak on the one hand for the most part. He is afraid of his son-in-law, and he is afraid of his oldest daughter who is married to the son-in-law, and that's not this other guy that's causing this. The son-in-law is actually, he's a bishop, and the son-in-law's father is the archbishop, I think. But anyway, so he really is a coward. Like, he sneaks out of town to try to take care of some situations. And it shows what happens when you start meddling in things without really counting the cost, if you will. And yet how good can come out of what was not intended for evil. This man, he really thinks he's doing the right thing and that he has to do this thing. I just think he's wrong. And that's not to say that the warden was the warden wasn't wrong, period. It's not to say that the church didn't handle it well. They probably didn't. But this guy didn't either. The solution wasn't to, strip a guy of a job that he was given honestly and took honestly and did well. And, so it was, at first I wasn't so sure about the book. And then as I got deeper and deeper into it and got more emotionally invested in it, I was like, okay, I really do like this book. Do I like Dr. Thorne more? Yes. But I really do like this book. So now I have February and March's books to read. So I have Barchester Towers, and I haven't even gotten March's out yet. But I'm looking forward to getting started. I think I've read the first chapter-ish. But I'm going to love this series so much, which is super cool. Next up, I read The Secret to Happiness, which is book 2 of the Cape Cod Creamery by Suzanne Woods Fisher. And again, it started off and I was like, uh-oh. See, I was having trouble with pretty much every book at first. Not every book, but pretty much almost every book. And so I was like, uh-oh. But then it all came rushing in. And it's interesting because all the other books that I was reading at the time that this one clicked, they were all clicking right then too. And then I haven't had a problem since. So I really think it was me. And so any of them that I was like, I'm not really getting into it, well, it was probably me. So this one, in the first book, you've got a mother and a daughter who go to Cape Cod on the daughter's honeymoon because her fiance called off the wedding. While there, they buy this ice cream shop and then have to work out personal relationships. The mother has a secret. The daughter is, really struggling, and we're going to make this work. And they each have different reasons, but they start to become a part of the community, and things are pretty cool. Loved that book. This one, it starts off, the mom, the daughter is now getting married again, and the mom goes off to ice cream school in Pennsylvania, which is a real thing. Suzanne Woods Fisher's husband has been to the ice cream school as well. But when the mom goes, one of the instructors is her niece. It is her husband's brother's child. Her husband and his brother were incredibly competitive, and those men put that on their daughters, and so the daughters were incredibly competitive, and it created a very mixed up relationship between the girls. It's really funny. This relationship between these girls reminds me so much in some ways of my cousin and myself. I always felt like she was competing with me, even though I wasn't in a competition and there wasn't anything. We were totally different people. These two gals are actually quite a bit alike, though, and that's part of it. But she is a chef, and she not only messed up and gave food poisoning to an entire convention. It just happened to be the Health and Safety Food Board of the state's convention. And so she's lost her job, and this is the only thing she could get. And when she sees her aunt, she's like, and finds out that they have this ice cream shop, she's like, can I come? And then she pretty much comes and curls up in bed to die, I mean, she's just like done. There's a lawsuit possibly pending. There's all kinds of stuff going on. She can't get her job to save her life. She just really is severely depressed. And she has a secret. And she's just, it's a mess. And the whole book is her and her relationship with the aunt / mom, and that coming back to a really healthy place. Also, her and the cousin, them working out their differences eventually. And also, there's this little boy that has been in both of them. He's super cute. He's Leo the cowboy, and he loves ice cream, and he wears cowboy everything, and he's just the cutest little guy. And he is really instrumental in a lot of ways in giving her back some of her interest in life itself. And that was really cool. But the secret to happiness is a book and class that the cousin insists that she goes to, and literally just drops her off. And that book, that class, she keeps going back and she keeps talking with the teacher. And it's interesting because there's a lot of faith in this book, but it's definitely... So I'm going to read from my Goodreads review because it says it better than I'm saying it right now. And so I'm just going to cut out about half of what I just said and go like this. We'll see what it says. So I said, I love a book rich in faith and full of spiritual nuggets from scripture. And at first I was disappointed not to find them. And it says that's when, but it's not that's. Eventually, I realized they had been there all along. Fisher used a subtler approach to revealing the truth of God's love and our need for it in this book. But she used the approach that someone with Callie's, this is the cousin who is depressed, but Callie's past needed, with an overbearing father demanding she follow his directions. Can you see how a father God might have repulsed someone in that fragile state? I really, 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 really love it because she used the approach that this particular person needed to gently just wrap God's love around her and say, you just surround her with people who do this and show her. So the gal from the first book, Dawn, it's Dawn and Marnie. Marnie's the mom, so Eminem, that's easy. But Dawn needed a 2x4 upside the head, and she needed it over and over until it got into her. She needed really strong, just let you have it truths. Callie can't handle that. She is just too emotionally fragile. And so I love that Fisher saw that and used what was best for her. And yeah, I did something I don't always do. I don't avoid it, but I don't always do it. I read the first chapter of the next book. And then I had to immediately go make sure that I had already pre-ordered it because I'm going to be really chomping at the bit to it just, that first chapter just packs a wallop. So there was that. And then I read the Hurtwood Village Murders. It's Marius Quinn. It's Benedict Brown's new mystery series. And this is the second one. And he's doing something, and it's funny. He's doing something really neat in these books. It's like he's playing with different styles of telling the story. And one of them is not telling. So when there's something in the past that is crucial to the scene. He takes us into the past instead of just telling us about the past. And I like it. If you had told me he was going to do that, I wouldn't have thought I would, because I really love what he does in the Lord Edgingtons. I really do. And it works really, really well. Another thing, I love it. He did it well, and he made me really like it. Another thing, he's doing crossovers with the Lord Edgingtons. He brings up Lord Edgington, and it's a whole lot of fun. And then it was really neat because one of the best things about Benedict Brown are once the book is over, he's got a lot of historical information. He tells you all about, the things he learned, whether it was, this little tidbit about cars or that song or whatever. Because there's songs and music and all of them. He tells you all these things, and you get to see where his research went, and it's great. He also tells you about the cover, because all of the covers are actual English houses that they've taken pictures of, and his wife is his cover artist, and they get permission from the owners, and then they turn them into the covers. And as often as possible, the actual house where everything happens, even though he may rename it, is still in the same place, which is really fun, and it's really cool. In this one, when he was talking about, more information about just the book, he said that he was playing with new stuff. And I was like, yes, I noticed. And well done, Benedict, because it was so good. Okay, a few things that I said in my review. Number one, if you like The Lord Edgington Investigates, then I think you'll like The Marius Quinn. They're really not a whole lot alike as characters, but they have that same charming, endearing quality. They're not just brilliant at something. They kind of fumble and make their own mistakes, which is super cool. And I like that. If you like Tommy and Tuppence, the Marius Quinn has a Tommy and Tuppence feel to it, in that he is playing off of his childhood friend Bella. They're playing off each other a lot. They're working together. And it's not the same in that they're just kind of bumbling around. They're approaching things better, but they don't get it all right the first time, which is always my favorite. But if you like Christopher's mother in the Lord Edgingtons, I feel like Bella in the Marius Quinn is what Christopher's mother would have been like if she were a young girl now. And so I think that's kind of, not really a young girl, but a younger woman now. And I think that's kind of cool. Also, in this one, right off the bat, I had the who. I knew exactly who it was. I had no idea why. And then I figured out the why. I could not figure out how to save my life. There are some things I could figure out. Others, I didn't know what it was. And I was like, okay, you're wrong. You're totally wrong. Then something else came up, and I went in a totally different direction and was 100% wrong by the end. I had just completely abandoned. And then he got me to believe something that didn't make sense. I was like, yeah, I guess it has to be. Wow. But I don't, what? But I believed it. And I was like, and not only did I believe it, but it wasn't like you've laid out a plausible thing, so it must be so. But it was like, you got me to believe that this actually happened. And I couldn't figure out how I had missed it and seen it, and yet why, and yet there's the why. It's all there, and yet it's wrong. And he got me. And I don't know if it's because it's that good or if my brain just wasn't in the right space. I don't care. It was just that much fun to listen to. So I was very happy about that. And he's got another one coming out. I think it's next month. I think he has one that comes out, or is it in the middle? I think it's the 17th. I think it comes out on St. Patrick's Day, I think. And then the following month, T.E. Kinsey has another Lady Hardcastle. So I'm like, sitting pretty, guys. I'm just like, woo. So there was that. And then I read Elementary. She read which actually I listened to. Elementary, she read by Vicki Delaney. It is Sherlock Bookshop Mystery. So in this one, Gemma has a bookshop and Sherlock Emporium where they sell all things Sherlock, which is funny because I have a store like that in one of my series. And so it was really kind of fun to read about another store like that. I was like, I like that. Okay. But very different stores too. It's really kind of funny how they got differently imagined. You know, I mean, she is much more focused on books and my store just focuses on it all. But someone dies, obviously, and they think it might be her because there is reason to suspect it. And what is so neat about this character, she's going to annoy people to no end. I have no doubt about it. A lot of people won't like her because on the one hand, she's not likable. I mean, she's not. But on the other hand, if you like the personality of Benedict Cumberbatch's portrayal of Sherlock, the arrogance and the just like, why can't you just accept that I know what I'm talking about attitude? Yeah, she's got that. And what I love is that it's not completely unfounded, but it's not completely founded either. She makes mistakes, and you can see that there's room for a cool character arc. Will she have it? Will the author do it? I don't know. I can't tell. But in this one, again, I knew who I thought it was, but there was absolutely no reason why. I could not come up with a reason why to save my life. There was no reason how. Could not figure that out either. And so, again, she got me to believe the wrong thing. Totally bought it. Because the right thing just didn't work. But she hadn't found these pieces by the time you come to this absolutely has to be conclusion. And then you go along and then she lays it out. See, and then you're like, yeah, well, no, it wasn't. So it was really a good mystery. There were a few things that just kept it from being great. But for the most part, I really did enjoy it. The narration isn't my favorite. I don't love or dislike it. It was just kind of there. But, what can I say? Okay, next up I read The Divine Proverb of Streusel by Sara Brunsvold. And guys, I've said this multiple times. I'm going to say it again. I have been praying for this woman ever since that first book came out because I knew this one was coming. She had talked about it on the podcast. And I loved the idea of it. And I was so afraid that people would build up unrealistic expectations of this book. And by the way, I've seen them do it. I've done it. Okay. I knew I was doing it at times. And I was aware of it. People, we're not usually aware of that we're being unrealistic. But I knew that no matter how good this was, it was going to be that other one's going to be hard to live up to because it had kind of gotten a little blown out of proportion, and yet it didn't. I don't know if that makes any sense. So I just, can it live up to it? Well, it can, and it does, and yet it doesn't, because this is not intended to be like that book in any way. This book has to stand on its own and do its own thing, and some people are going to find it better. There's always going to be people who find it better. Some people won't like it as well, but they'll like it a lot. And then they're going to have people that, because it's not what they expected, they're not going to like it. And there's just no way to get around that. I gave it 5 stars because I made myself read it with I'm judging this book on its own merit, not by what else I have read by the author, because that's just not fair. This is telling a totally different story. For one thing, to show just kind of a difference, Mrs. Kit starts funny. You're laughing from page 1. And by the end, you want to sob. I'm not a crier, so I wasn't sobbing. But if I was a crier, I mean, I choked up. Does that count? But because it's taking you not just through the fact that this woman is dying, but also through a hard life and yet a rich, well-lived, God-inspired, just amazing life. And so you're missing this person. And yet, on the other hand, you're rejoicing that she's gone, but you are going to miss her, even though she's not real, okay? In this one, it's flipped in a totally different way. In this one, you start off with a kick to the gut and you end on a smile. And it's not a strong, laughy smile, like, total joy and delight, but it is, yes, there's hope, there's redemption, there's beauty. In this one, so I can't remember even her name, Nikki. Nikki's father walked out on their mother. They're adults. Her sister has children. She's a teacher. So, it's after 30 years of marriage or something like that. He walks out on her mother for another woman. And she is having trouble forgiving. Now, Sara Brunsvold she talks on my podcast, and it's in the back of this too, talks about how this mirrors part of her life. Her dad did this when she was, just out of high school or in high school. I think it was just out of high school. And she was just embittered against him, and how she and her father finally, had those forgiving moments and worked through it. And it turned out that because of that, the very last words that Sara said to her father were, "I love you." And that didn't look like that could ever be, but it was stifling her and choking her, and she was struggling. And so she had to come to that place of forgiveness to be able to function. And you do see that in here, and you see what could bring a man to that place, and then you don't at the same time. She never justifies what her father did. Sara never justifies what, I think her father's name is Chris, what Chris did. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is forgiveness is on you. A lack of forgiveness is going to eat away you. If you do nothing else, you forgive so that your heart isn't eaten away by the cancer of unforgiveness, right? There's so much in here. It is rich. It is a different kind of richness. It's a slower paced book, mostly because, in Mrs. Kipp, she's in hospice. You've got to learn a lot in a very short amount of time, because, when you go into hospice to die, not all hospice is death oriented, but most is, let's face it. But when you go in hospice to die, you don't usually have a lot of time. Well, in this one, she's got a summer on her family's farm. So there's a lot of time, and you need a lot of time to come to grips with what you're learning about yourself and about your family and about what might have, and to kind of break down those walls. And it's there's a lot of little metaphors in here. She's cooking her way through her family's recipe book that she finds, and she's learning a lot of really neat lessons that whoever wrote this recipe book had written to someone specific and for a specific reason, to teach these lessons. Well, she reads that lesson, and then, at the same time, they're remodeling this farmhouse. So they're sanding and, cleaning and scrubbing and, priming. And there's so many of those metaphors. It was beautiful. I loved it. I refuse to compare it to Mrs. Kipp, because it's not fair to this book. And it's not fair to Mrs. Kipp either. Because, again, we start making things even more than they were. But I will say, I don't think as many people are going to love it as strongly And I don't think that that's the book's fault. For the most part, people who don't enjoy a slow, steady read won't enjoy it. It is a slow, steady read. It is heartbreaking in all the best ways. And it is life-giving because you see what the Lord does in their lives. So I loved it. Absolutely, 100%. Can't wait for the next one. And the next one, I think, is she the one? Don't quote me on this. Someone's next book has to do with a mother-daughter team doing a road trip of bookshops. And it might be her. I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember. So there was that one. Then I finally finished the winter story from this selection of, there's one for each season, 4 novellas by Tracie Peterson. Some of them were obviously much older, and then there was one newer one. I don't remember which one was the newer one. This one was winter, and it was about a husband and wife who have drifted so far apart in their 10 years of marriage that he's never home. He's always working hard. She's feeling abandoned, and she walks out, and he's trying to get her back, and all the stuff. And I really kind of liked the first story in this one. I did really kind of like it. It was sweet. It was a single mom, widowed, and a guy from church who helps with soapbox derby, and just a sweet story. Nothing amazing, but it was sweet. And there was one about these 4 sisters that move back into a house together. They're all struggling, and they move back in. It was okay. I didn't mind that one, but I didn't love any of them. And this last one, well, I'm going to send it to a friend. I hope she knows someone who likes it, or maybe she will want to read it. Or I got nothing. I'm going to give the whole book 3 stars because I can't say I didn't like it. It was just okay. It was okay. I would never ever read them again. So it's not for me. And that's okay. I'm not, part of me says I'm not sorry I read them. But if I had known going in how I feel about it now, being just kind of meh, I wouldn't have read it. So there's that. Then I finally finished my second to last, but the second book of the second book of the Eliot trilogy, Pilgrim Inn. This one, it's Pilgrim's Inn. I keep calling it Pilgrim Inn. So in the first book, A Bird in the Tree, we have this guy falling in love with his brother's ex-wife. And the matriarch of the family really gets a hold of them and says, hey, what is wrong with you guys? You need to go back to your husband. You need to just know this is not right. And it was a beautiful picture of people doing the right thing even when it's hard, and showing that people make mistakes, but it's what you do with the mistakes. It was great. And then this one came along, and for a lot of it I was struggling because, and I think I was supposed to be, okay? I gotta make that clear. So in this one, the woman's husband falls in love with this house, mostly because that same matriarch, Nadine's the mom, Lucille Elliott decides that they should live there. The children need to be closer to her. They need fresh air and out of London. And the wife needs to be far away from him. He works in London. So that there is no continuing temptation, because she has gone back to her husband. And I thought they were divorced in that first book. But this one is almost written as if they weren't yet. And so I don't understand that. But they had to have been because they were engaged in that first book. And that couldn't have happened. It's just before or just after World War II. So it really couldn't have happened. And so I think this one, it just, they assume you know that, so you're making assumptions. But so they move close to the Elliot family home into this old Pilgrim inn and actually turn it into an inn. And the woman, Nadine, who he fell in love with in the last book, she goes back to her husband and she's determined to make a go of it and to do what's right. But her heart isn't in it. And she is... the author does a really good job of showing that because she hasn't cut herself off completely, even though they are broken up, she has kept an emotional tether that he's not necessarily aware of, and yet he's clinging anyway. It just shows that you decide to cut it off, and that doesn't, especially when you're family and you have to see each other, right? So the primary story in this book is going from we're going to do what's right in action to making it right in thought and in heart. And so that's a significant part of this book. There's relationships are being restored and rebuilt, and new relationships are being forged among family members and friends. But there's quite a lot in here. And I gotta say, one of my favorite characters in this entire series is Lucille's, it would be his uncle. One of her sons is a vicar, or is he a rector? He's one of those. He is just the dearest man ever. I just love him so much. He's humble, but he's wise, and he doesn't compromise, but he is as gentle as he can be when he needs to be. It's just, I don't know, it's just beautiful. And so this book, I'm trying to think, do I like this one or Burn the Tree more? I think I like Burn the Tree more because this one made me angrier. But I really did like it. And I'm eager to see what's going to happen in this third one. So, Heart of the Family. I don't know what it's about. But as soon as I get done with that, my year of Goudge will finally be over. Goodness. And then I'll do my Goudge ranking and talking about them all. But Goudge doesn't shy away from the fact that people do wrong, sinful, ugly things. And she lays them out there and then says, okay, what are we going to do with it? And so if that bothers you, Goudge is not for you. But if you want to see how maybe people should handle things once they've blown it, I'm going to say Goudge is a good option. And then, so my Chantal Reads All Day, I had to read over 400 pages. And then one of the cards I had, it says has 500 plus pages. So technically, I actually got one of the cards done as well as finished what I needed to do for Chantal, because this book has 3 books in it. It has over 600 pages in it, and I read over 400 of those pages. So it has over 500 pages in it, and I read over 400 of it. So I'm counting it. So, okay, in this one, it is a trilogy by George MacDonald. The first one is Thomas Wingfield Curate. And Thomas Wingfield is struggling with faith after he was confronted with, you don't really believe what you teach. And he realizes not only that, but he is dishonest. He's using sermons written by other people that his uncle gave to him to do this with. But he hasn't actually said, oh, by the way, I didn't write this. And nobody thinks he did, but he gets a pricking of his conscience that says, hey, I'm not being honest. So he starts really searching out the Lord. And one of the people that really shows him the gospel and the truth in Scripture is a dwarf. There's a dwarf and his niece. They're both dwarves in the area. And this man has a strong, deep faith that supersedes church doctrine and sits squarely in Scripture instead. This is focused on the Lord and not on traditions of men. And for Wingfield, when you're talking the Church of England, there's a whole lot of traditions there. So it's just the entire story is him coming to a true faith in Christ as a curate, preaching in church, and he's preaching all these things that, oh my goodness, the uproar. But there's also a lot of other things going on in there as well. And I can't really talk about it, or it's a total spoiler that doesn't need to be spoiled. So there's that one. Finally, I read the second book in here, The Lady's Confession, which was Paul Faber's Surgeon. And Paul Faber and Thomas Wingate are both very, very similar people. They're both honest, except that while Wingate doesn't necessarily disbelieve in God, Faber does. And so the story is about him, the way that he tries to live his principles. He considers himself a good man, an honorable man, and he wants to live out those principles as the surgeon. Well, he gets called in to take care of this woman who is ill, falls in love with her and marries her. Now, here is where a spoiler comes. You want to skip to the next section if you don't want the spoiler. It's a spoiler that I wouldn't have minded knowing personally. I'm just going to put that out there, so for what it's worth. But after he convinces this woman that there isn't a God and that all this dogma is not real, they get married. But the woman, I don't remember why, I feel like they were stuck somewhere, and so she goes to church with the people she was stuck with, and Thomas Wingfield is preaching, and her conscience is pricked, and she's been holding a secret. And I have to say, I was livid. I was so mad until I realized that I was putting modern sensibilities in a different era, and you can't do that. It's not right, because for one thing, they couldn't have written anything else because this is how things were. But also, later, you actually get to see that MacDonald handles the situation. So basically, this woman wasn't a virgin when she married him. She confesses to him. And he casts her off. He wants nothing to do with her. And casts her off in the sense of, I want nothing to do with you, not get out of my house. So he's got these lofty ideas that he's just going to live with her and tolerate her existence and just be this upstanding person. And because he doesn't want his name tarnished. I hate that double standard that says it's okay for men to be this person, but we have to, but on the other hand, and she is so melodramatic about it. Can I just say all the melodrama, I should just kill myself, and all the stuffiness, but really their virtue is all they had to keep them in a good place in polite society. Even the lowest of the lowest classes looked down on women who were not pure when they got married, but they kind of winked at guys. As long as the guys didn't flaunt it too much, they would, but she was just seriously prostrate and was despondent and was wanting to kill herself and the whole 9 yards. And then the story progresses from there to where they each separately have to come to a point of faith and then a point of forgiveness. And there's so much that happens. And I really can't say more without real spoilers, because that is like just the thinnest, like when you make a cake and you do the crumb coat. That's all it is the crumb coat. It's not the cake. It's not even the frosting. It's just the crumb coat. It was really good. The first one was definitely my favorite. But I think I tabbed at least as much in the second half. So, I don't know. I'm going to read the third one and finish it up while, I'm already this far. But, yeah. So, those are what I read in February. And then, goodness, that's probably long enough for a whole video. I'm going to skip the mini haul. We're just going to skip that. But I am going to quickly run through, I'm going to move the camera, quickly run through my March TBR just to kind of re-show which ones I left in here. All right, but I will be reading this one. It's not going to be over there because I got it up here. And then Dr. Thorne, I'm hoping to also read this month so that I can be caught up with those finally. But I'm just going to flip this around and show you these. Most of them I won't have to talk about because we've already talked about them. In the middle grade March thing and all that. But I'm going to show you the other ones just in case. Okay, let's do this. Okay, so Best Left Questions, second book in the Love Across Londons, which is a time split, not a time slip, that I pulled out as a possibility for the Chantal cards. I can't remember which one I pulled it out for, but I do want to read that, so I went ahead and left that in here. The Tangled Tale of Wool Gathering Castoffs was the other one that I got, and I didn't know which one I would read for published this year. Well, I read Streusel, so I did leave that one out because I do really want to read that one. There's The Heart of the Family, which is the next in the Eliot, the final Goudge that I have. There's not the final Goudge. I don't own all the Goudges. There's Venetian Hill or something like that. David's new secretary, Sebastian, stumbles into the story, a broken and war-torn man plagued by painful experiences of World War II. So it's just after World War II. What is worse, the demons from David's own past may be inextricably bound to the sources of Sebastian's haunted memories, yet embraced by the peaceful and spiritually renewing surroundings of Dame Rose. Both must learn the meaning of personal sacrifice as they forgive others and themselves. So, yeah, it'll be the final book. And I'm starting to, just from that, I feel like that one's going to be my favorite. All right, then Emma and the Reasons, which is, they all have reasons for their singleness. Emma and her two roommates have one major thing in common, other than being in their early 30s, that is. They all have reasons for their singleness. Together, they live in quiet harmony. But unbeknownst to them, their married friends are plotting their demise. The arrival of a plethora of eligible men will throw their worlds topsy-turvy and will take them through a hilarious ride through the dating world with some unexpected results. So that is my buzzword book. I think it's something about having a name in it. I'm not sure. The Gilded Girl, we already talked about. I kept The Lost Property Office. Works for Animal. So does that one. Goodnight, Mr. Tom also works for Animal. The Lost Year, which I've already started. So maybe I should put that up there. Sara's Trek, because yes. Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus. The Jeweled Moth. Meet the Malones, which I should put up here so I can read fast and see if I'm even going to finish. And then this is my Chantal Reads All Day. I do not remember what the prompt is. But whatever it is, maybe it had to have a house. It may have had to have a house on the cover. I'm still on the Montgomery side, and so I think it has to have a house. And so I figured This isn't the only one that had a house, but I decided to do that because when I read it, I did not read it with Goodreads, and I know I didn't finish it. I thought I did, and again, I discovered I didn't. So that's my Chantal. So these are my picks for March, and I have lots more if I don't finish it, including sneak peek Cynthia Rylant. So I will probably throw that in there if I can. Meanwhile, guys, I am going to go and see you on Thursday with my audiobook things. And I hope that you can actually even see me, because if you can't, I better do this again. No. So, yeah. All the bookness. Yeah. This is a mess. These are to be reads. These are